Good evening. Welcome to this webinar tonight, sponsored by the Forest History Association of Wisconsin. Just a little shameless promotion of the Forest History Association. You can see our mission up there on the screen: inform, educate, archive, and publish. So that's our mission. If you would like to join the Forest History Association of Wisconsin, you can go to our website, foresthistoryassociationofwisconsin.com, and look under membership. An individual membership is $20 a month. A student is 10 and a family is 30. There's some other categories. So if you support our mission to inform and educate, archive and publish, please do join. And obviously we're fulfilling two parts of that mission tonight: the inform and educate. To introduce our speaker tonight, I would like to turn it over to Don Schnitzler, who also sits on the board with me. We affectionately call him Schnitz. So there you go, Schnitz.
All right. Tonight, we have the good fortune of having Jim Bokern talking to us about a project, the Northwoods Forest History Museum. In the presentation tonight, he's going to talk about the museum's design, exhibit space, including digital display extensions that will connect the museum to other forestry destinations across Wisconsin's Northwoods. Jim is a retired educator. He's the recipient of the 2022 Historic Preservation Award for his work documenting and interpreting CCC Camp Mercer. He continues active cultural research in the Lakeland area, and he also serves as the president of the Manitowish Waters Historical Society. Tonight, we're going to try something new. We're going to open the microphones at the end of the presentation to allow individuals to ask questions directly of Jim rather than use the chat feature. This is an experiment tonight, so save your questions to the end, and Tom is going to take control of the microphone at the end, and I'll give people access to voicing their questions one at a time. If you have any problems or experience problems with the connections, you can put those into the chat feature anytime during the talk. Tom and I will watch for that and try to handle those as they come up. So without any further ado, I want to turn this over to Jim. Everyone's looking forward to your presentation tonight. So take it away, Jim.
Well, thanks so much. And I'm going to start to share my screen. And I really appreciate this opportunity to tell you about our project, which is the the Northwoods Forest History Museum. It's actually a collaborative effort between the Manitowish Waters Historical Society, the North Lakeland Discovery Center, and really several other groups. I'm going to highlight what the project is, what some of our visions are, what we have done so far in its development, and kind of get you fired up about the possibilities going forward to get people engaged in loving the history of our forests. Okay, this is all then based around restoring a 90-year-old CCC building that was then co-opted by the YCC, and have that rebuilt to be part of, to be really the heart of our new museum experience. Okay, and I am not moving. Let's try it again. There we go. So we're going to be sharing much of the information from the Forest History Museum. We're going to focus on the CCC, the Youth Conservation Corps, which is all part of what we have here in Manitowish Waters at State House Lake, which is now the North Lakeland Discovery Center. So when we think about the need and the importance of the forest is so defining to the Northwoods and our identity. We want to go all the way back to prehistoric times to today to talk about the practices of those who lived here, worked here, and how the governance affects the forest. understand that the forest has had many uses and has evolved dramatically over time. And then we feel that there's really a strong sense of preservation that needs to come out of this and really try to create informed stewards going forward. So we're trying to affect future generations. How are we going to do that? Well, first of all, we're going to preserve this older building, and in that house the stories and the historical uses of the Northwoods Forest, going all the way back to prehistoric indigenous communities. We want to talk about forest practices from before contact to today that sculpted our woodlands, lakes, and streams. And importantly, the last bullet, we want to integrate the museum experience with real-world sites. And this doesn't have to be just in the Manitowish Waters area. And this might be a nice way that we can connect with the Forest History Association of Wisconsin. Let me give you an example on this slide that I inserted here. If you look to the right, you see the little pins all around Manitowish Waters, and we want to create geolocating maps on the left there, and on the right over here, there's another geolocating map. And when we put the museum together, we want people to leave the museum. The museum would become a launch pad, if you will, to go to Price County, to the Round Lake Dam, or to go to Eagle River for Trees for Tomorrow, or to Rhinelander at Pioneer Park down here below, or to Lac Du Flambeau at the George W. Brown Museum and Cultural Center. So we don't want this museum experience to be static. And we want it to be also, if you look at the center, integrated into all of our great trails and destinations to include exercise and outdoor recreation. It's not a one and done experience. At least that is our greatest hope. So who's going to use this? Our audience? Well, historical enthusiasts who love the Northwoods and their traditions. This will be a destination, I'm sure. But we just had a request from a Fox Valley School District to do everything we want to do with school groups, to take them like to this museum, to take them in the field. They asked for several destinations and presentations from the Manitowish Waters Historical Society. And those are exactly the curricula that we're looking to build with local schools and regional schools. So that was really quite fun to get that inquiry today. People interested in Indigenous nations, and we're working with the Indigenous nations themselves. We're working closely with Teresa Mitchell at the George Brown Museum and Cultural Center in Lac Du Flambeau. Thousands of folks come to the North Lakeland Discovery Center each year. Obviously, this would be an easy connection. And there is a growing ecotourism and groups staying at the Discovery Center and at campgrounds and around. So we have a lot of chances for multi-day programs. For instance, I do pontoon tours in the Turtle Flambeau flowage, and we speak extensively about the forest and how the forest relates to the Turtle Flambeau flowage. It's really cool. So here's our plan. We have this old building, as you see on the left, and it is old, and we want to restore it. And not just restore it to have it for somebody to go in, but actually to put displays in. That would include artifacts, images, digital presentations. And we want to relocate the building from over by the waterfront area. Again, for those of you who maybe didn't pick up on this, the building on the left was first a CCC building. We'll go through the timeline for a while. And then it was a storage area, and then ultimately came back to the North Lakeland Discovery Center, or State House Lake YCC. And there they made it into their rec hall, or PX. And ultimately, we're going to try to build it to look like something that you see as this restored CCC building in Minnesota. So we have a plan and a goal, and we've even spent a little money. You're going to find out that we got a $1,000 grant And we use that to create one of our model displays. And we've raised over $14,000 and have paid for architects and are developing schematics. Even with all of that, we're still probably looking at 2025 before we would go to the build. Who are the people sponsoring this? The North Lakeland Discovery Center, which is a important group in the Northwoods that tries to connect folks to the environment and the beautiful natural world in northern Wisconsin, and the Manitowish Waters Historical Society. I want to point you to the other stakeholders. Former YCC campers have really stepped up and really got excited about this and are contributing. The Wisconsin DNR is very supportive of this. This includes Craig Dalton, the property manager for the Northern Highland American Legion Forest, Richard Kubicek, the historic preservation officer for the DNR, and others. And the Forest History Association is, again, another stakeholder, and we're looking to add more. So these collaborations will hopefully bring this plan to fruition. So here is the building. It's kind of got a funky story, really. In 1933 to 35, it was on Palmer Lake, and it was what we would call a sub-camp for the Civilian Conservation Corps, building some roads that would be used for fire breaks between the UP and Wisconsin. And it's kind of funny how the states really delineated different camps working on either side of the state line. So it was a short-term camp, and after a while it was moved to Rhinelander, used as a bunkhouse, then a storage house, and it sat there for a long time. And then the new YCC program started in 1962. The director of the camp, Brismaster, found out this building was available. He sent his guys down there, and they got it and brought it back. And using that building and some salvage materials from some demoed cabins for fire tower observation, they built this PX, and it is beloved, and it operated from 63 to 96, and ultimately that ended the YCC, and it's kind of been sitting there dormant at the North Lakeland Discovery Center, and it needs some help, to be sure, but we want to use it to feature as this, our new YCC museum, and it's a relatively small space. This is the interior floor plan that we're looking at. So you would enter here through the, well, I went too far, through the ramp on this side, and there would be a welcome area, and then we would have a rotating exhibit here. So let's say the Forest History Association Wisconsin said, hey, we got some great artifacts and some cool things. Well, there's room for our friends in this model. But then it follows with the First Nations, logging, lumber barons, early forest management, the CCC, the YCC, and modern forest management. So you kind of work your way around here. But again, it's a relatively small space, but we have big plans and want to improve this footprint to reach far out into the great destinations throughout the state. Here's another interior view. And like I said, we have actually created the YCC display for with that grant money we received. So the renovation is going to take some work, and we're going to try to move the building, but the building is not going to be overly ornate and alike. It is a barracks, and it was a YCC PX, but we are going to try to insulate it and make it a year-round building, because really we've had demand from local schools. So that's really kind of cool and fun. As you look at the other displays on the opposite side of the building, I want to point out, obviously, with those big yellow arrows, that we're going to have touch pads, and we have some demos of that are going to be in this presentation today. We're going to have limited wall space, but we're going to have timelines and information and artifacts, as you see here on the left in the CCC display. but also we're going to try to create ways for folks to interact on the iPads. And we actually have some demos of that in just a little bit. So our first exhibits are going to be as follows. We are going to start with the First Nations and how the First Nations people utilize and maintain and altered the forest. We also want to get to modern forestry practices of both the indigenous communities. For us, it's mostly the Ojibwe, and how they interact with the current practices. I'm going to back up real quick here and tell you one thing that we are going to add to make this inclusive. And I think it really helps us stand out as a museum concept. Oftentimes when you go to a museum like this, you have these little enclaves and you feel like you're changing the channel on the TV and you've made a big departure as you go through the march, even though it's a forest history museum. What we propose to do is put a timeline across the top of each of these displays. And in each of those timelines for the period of operation, so this is the CCC, so it would be from 1933 to 1942, there'll be 3 concurrent timelines showing what was going on with the indigenous communities at the same time, what was going on with government forestry practices, and what was going on with private forestry practices. And then that'll be the same for the YCC and modern period. So at no time would you sit there and look at the CCC thing and say, oh, well, you know, the Ojibwe must be gone. Well, the truth is, in Lac Du Flambeau, there was an administrative camp there that was what they called an Indian Division Civilian Conservation Corps camp. And it's really cool, and it should be part of the destination. So we're really trying to make this small space do a lot of work for ourselves. So back to the First Nations, and these timelines will go across this. We're going to be looking at all the different practices, and I'm proud to say that this will be developed largely by Teresa Miller and some of the other elder traditional Ojibwe to make sure that this is authentic and respectful of indigenous communities. The next exhibit will be a merging of early Northwoods logging, the cutover, and early management in the development of the Department of Forestry, perhaps under E.M. Griffith. The next one after that is going to be the CCC camps, and we'll talk about their purposes and where they were in Wisconsin and their legacies and alike. And the fourth one would be the YCC. And this is really fun because the North Lakeland Discovery Center was State House Lake, and it was the first of the YCC. And Wisconsin was one of 2 states that started this model, which is a national program today. So lots to celebrate. We've gone a step further with this, and this was the one that we built out with our grant and displayed at a June event this year, and people were really excited about it. We wanted to talk about how we might use those iPads. You remember we went back at those big arrows looking at the iPads? Well, for the Youth Conservation Corps, we can actually build and link these together with the stories, and I have some experiments to show you. So this would be like a touch screen, if you will, and you could just reach out and touch your screen and you go to this, and you can hear about building shelters, protecting streams, building trails, and fighting fires. So you go to protecting streams. Whoop, I went one too far. Go back, go to protecting streams, and you see these guys from State House taking care of riparian work and wing dams to protect sturgeon spawning. And we can insert audio there, and we have audio from our interviews, or fighting fires, and we could put in audio there. We could go back, and you could go to something like working with rangers, protecting the forest, Well, here we have the YCCers with their backpack sprayers. These are all State House Lake images, but we've
Jim?
interviewed these guys. Yes.
We're still on the Youth Conservation Corps screen that has Camp Life working
Oh,
with
no.
rangers.
Curses. Okay, let me go back. So you did not make the leap. Let's try it again. Well, you know what I could do is I could just exit out of this and go to the other one. How does that sound? Okay, screen share has stopped. I'm going to screen share again. I'm going to go to this one. And I'm going to engage it. Can you see that now?
We're on the Youth Conservation Corps screen, so just, I think advance, you'll be good.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. The hyperlink didn't connect. Well, that was probably hard to follow. So I'll try to do some of it a little faster. So imagine this being a touch screen on an iPad, all right? And we could talk about, for instance, working with rangers, and you click on this and we would have images like protecting wildlife. And here's an image from State House Lake, and we could put the audio and or text right into that spot. Here's an example where we're protecting the forests. And this is YCC pictures. Here's the forest fire. This is the YCC. Here's another one. And this is one of the gentlemen who was here putting out the fire, and we interviewed him. Listen up.
And there was a peat fire. So my crew was called out to fight the peat fire with the backpack water cans. And again, it sounds very glamorous, but it was hard work because you're always bent over, you're breathing soot, and it's such a deep fire that it's probably not going to go out, but you put it as you put out the superficial where the air is getting to it. And then when we came back, all the campers, the rest of the campers that weren't out there, they lined the road and in their toe guards, shin splints, and an axe at attention. And then as the bus went by, they would all go like this.
Well, you can just see how he's beaming and how proud he is of that memory and this whole experience and the different roles in the forest. We have had amazing videos shot of both men and women. And this has really become an exciting and ongoing project, one that is really unexpected. And, you know, you can just bounce around on this thing. We have camp life, and we came in and ran into a gentleman who was at camp. This gentleman is Ed Marsh. And this is a picture from camp of people playing the guitar. And Ed actually created a variation to Folsom Prison Blues using the bus he took from his home in Appleton. And it actually pairs.
Yeah, so anyway, I took the song Folsom Prison Blues and changed it around to State House Prison Blues.
All right.
And like I mentioned earlier, the popular mode of transportation, if you didn't want to do all the driving yourself, was to ride the Greyhound bus.
Right.
I hear that bus a-coming, it's rolling round the bend. I ain't seen a girl since I don't know when, but I'm stuck in State House Prison, and time keeps dragging on. But that bus keeps a-rolling on down to Appleton. When I was just a baby, my mama told me, Earl, always be a good boy, don't ever mess with girls. But I kissed a girl in Mercer just to hear her sigh.
At any rate, you get the idea that we have a lot of fun with getting these stories and putting them on there, and people can just use this interactively as they work on those keypads, and then we can send them out to explore different areas throughout the Northwoods, and that would be the final link with that. And we are actually using a new free web-based system funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities called Clio that looks real promising. Okay, so I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to go back to my presentation one. So I'm going to stop the share. And then I'm going to share my screen and the sound is on. And I may have to locate myself again. We'll see. Nope, I look to be in the right spot. And there we go.
All is good.
Well, no, I put myself in the wrong one. I'm back in YCC land. One more time. Okay, share the screen. Now we're going to go to the beginning. And I'm going to go down to that. I'm going to lock in. And we're back. Okay. We'll talk other exhibits would be on forestry management, more modern forestry management and alike, coming all the way up to present time. Then finally, we would have rotating exhibits. It could be, you know, with our friends in fish management, the DNR, or it could be with the Ojibwa community with maple sugar manufacturing and how it's maybe evolved over time. We've thought of Ojibwa seasonal activities, forest fires and fighting and prevention, history of Northwoods land ownership, early hunting and fishing traditions. I won't read them all to you, but there would be no shortage, and it would keep it fresh, and it would form more collaborations. So this is our thinking, rather than having a foot or two more and a couple more exhibits. We thought have this collaborative element would be a strong presence. So our project schedule is we got organized last year in 21. In 21 and 22, we hired an architect, and I showed you some of those drawings. And we are still right now in 22 looking at developing budgets and alike. But as I had mentioned before, COVID and building and contractor availability and alike has really pushed us back a year in what we had hoped to have been doing. So the summer 22 and 23, detailed planning events, and then fall of 23, we roll out on our fundraising. With this in mind, we'll talk about this a little bit later. This is not just kind of a prototype. We've built more than this digital presence and a display. We've got designs, schematics, and we also wrote a grant with the National Endowment for the Humanities, a matching grant 50-50 for a total of $300,000. And we will get feedback on that grant at the end of this year. And that is going to have a big influence on fall 23 fundraising and spring 24 construction. But we got favorable feedback from our early reviews. So this is something that we're certainly serious about. So how will the museum itself operate? It will be on the grounds of the North Lakeland Discovery Center. It will have its own board and bylaws and members. It'll all be done and financed, and the building will be owned by the North Lakeland Discovery Center. The Manitowish Waters Historical Society doesn't own buildings or boats or anything like that, but we actively fundraise. And we've done this before for our pontoon tours, which we did over 50 this year already. We did the primary fundraising, Manitowish Waters Historical Society, for a beautiful 26-foot weir pontoon boat with a 115 Yamaha on it, and basically gave it. And the Discovery Center raised about a third of the funds. We did 2/3, but the Discovery Center owns it. It's their boat, and they cover our insurance, and we collaborate, and we do the curriculum, and it has been so well received. Following the pontoon boat model, we would do very much the same thing with the museum. We would be right in there doing a lot of the heavy lifting and work, but we don't own those kinds of things. To secure the building, keep it in good repair will be key. We will have to create budgets for all of this and divide that up and then fundraise for the long-term maintenance of the building. The building itself is not planned to be manned to begin with. We will have security cameras in there. And we have the unbelievable fortune of having two gentlemen in our community who work internationally in creating displays for movie sets, for businesses, for theater sets, and they can make a facsimile axe that's absolutely safe so quickly and easily. And they are all behind this project. So it's just really quite a blessing that we have this kind of support, and we're getting a lot of in-kind support in the development of the display pieces. And that is our plan. We will have to comb out the details, but we're always looking for others who want to take an active role in being part of this experience, whether being a docent on site, financially contributing. You may have an artifact to some extent, or have skill with film editing. Who knows? The budget, right now, we're at a placeholder because, as I said, we are seeking bids and information, but it is a topsy-turvy world when it comes to trying to build anything right now and have deadlines. And we also have the National Endowment for Humanities grant, which I put a screenshot of right here in the middle, that if we could secure that and our fundraising be cut in half, we're really hopeful that'll give us momentum to really push us ahead in the timeline like I described. So that's it. The Manitowish Waters Historical Society and the North Lakeland Discovery Center are looking to collaborate with others and to put together a forest history museum that will reclaim a old CCC, YCC building and make it a fun place to go, learn, and then get out and go to other great places in Wisconsin and learn even more. So that was about 30 minutes, and I'm ready for questions.
I am opening up microphones. And people could use the raise hand function if they know how to do that. Or unmute yourself. Like I said, I'm opening microphones and it might take me a minute to get through the whole list. So if you know how to unmute, you can unmute and ask your question, or raise your hand and I'll unmute you. One thing I wanted to say, Jim, I think the use of the iPads, given that you have such limited space, is brilliant. You know, the ability to access all that information and you know, have it digitally available, given that you have such a small space, will be hugely beneficial. So, Mary has a question. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to say, I love the passion that he has and the excitement in his voice. If I had the money, I'd pay for it.
Thank you.
I think I think it's wonderful. And certainly I can, as time goes on, contribute what I can. But what a wonderful, wonderful thing you are doing. That is so great and thrilling.
We're excited about it, and it has all sorts of collaborative potential, and I think that's what really kind of scaffolds our efforts strongly in going forward.
I just wanted to add a couple more things. First of all, I think the technology is fantastic that you've been using. And as I have been listening to this, there are a couple of people that I know that I am going to, because this will be on YouTube, right? Is that going to be on YouTube?
Right, to the Forest History Association YouTube channel. Don
Okay.
usually gets it up the next day.
Okay, so I'm going to point a couple of people as I think about it. I will point people to that because I know that they'll be interested in different aspects of it.
Well, cool.
So that's
We
my
would,
com-
we would love the help. And, you know, being an educator for 34 years and, you know, I started in 1981 where there was literally no technology and retired in 2015. And things were really beginning to cook as far as some strong technology. And I was able to transfer that over into my retired avocation, which is basically historic preservation. And it's just PowerPoint. It's nothing fancy. And we can buy tablets and load PowerPoint and just keep it right in the tablet. We don't have to worry about internet or anything else and speed slowing down. It would be lightning fast.
Wow.
Okay, Mary Schuler has her hand up, so she'll be next. After that, Bob Walkener, I think, wants to say something. Mary, go ahead. You're unmuted, Mary. You should be able to speak. Schuler.
Okay, now I already did my part. Is there somebody else?
Oh, okay. So then was it Mary J. Gervidis? Did you have
Yeah,
something?
no, I've already sent my part. Is there another Mary that put her hand up?
Yeah, Mary Schuler.
Okay. So I'm done.
All right, Bob, did you have a question? You unmuted.
I have a question, yes. Back in 1963 and probably 64, my brother was going to forestry school in Oshkosh, and he was a counselor at the McCann River. Is there any history of that camp around any place? McCann River Youth Conservation Corps.
Yes, there is some, and you know, we're not actively going after the McCann River and Ernie Swift and you know Monticello and the others, but we are running into folks, and we're creating a digital video library, and we have probably now a dozen men and women who were at the camps, the YCC camps, and they have been just enthusiastic and really sharing how this experience kind of redefined their lives. So if we ever got somebody from McCann River or other areas, you know, I'm not a film expert, but I can record film and I can edit it and I can put it into a PowerPoint. But I think it's powerful that we hear these messages, and it should be from more than State House Lake. And that's where I live. And it should be for more than just men. And we have 2 women currently recorded, and I think we have a 3rd woman who we're going to speak to from the YCC experience too.
Oh, thank you.
It's really cool that you're collecting those oral histories. You know, these people have, you know, experienced this, and having those videos, I think, will be very compelling, particularly when you pair it like you did with the song. It was absolutely perfect. I thought it was great.
Yeah, that was just serendipitous. Ed came from a big family, and his dad drove truck on deliveries, and he got a ride up but took the bus back, and you know, he identified with the bus within his song, and it was so important to him, and it's just fun, and he just wanted to share that song. And I am really thrilled to be part of the team, myself and Kay Kranz. And Kay Kranz is another retired history teacher in the Manitowish Waters Historical Society. She's a gifted educator and historian.
So just any other questions out there? If you want to know how to unmute yourself, find your name and click on it, and there should be a little unmute button, and you can unmute yourself and ask a question or raise your hand, either one. I did have a question myself, Jim. What kind of geographical area are you going to cover? Are you going to stick just to Manitowish Waters or Vilas County, or what's your kind of home base?
Well, you know, I think we would certainly reach out beyond that. And when you go to these different topics or displays, it really changes, you know, locally. So if you're talking about River Drive logging, I mean, you got to go to Round Lake and Price County and send them that way. And if you're talking about CCC camps and logging museums, you got to send them to Rhineland or Pioneer Park. And if you're looking at railroads, you're probably going to send them to Leona, right?
Yep.
And then, you know, we can build on that. I mean, are we going to reach to Canada? No, but are we going to reach to Ashland? Sure.
Well, especially, it's a really good idea to form partnerships with the other organizations in the area and share make sure the public are aware that there is this resource at Pioneer Park or other places.
Yeah, Pioneer Park is just an amazing resource. And, you know, it's a seasonal resource. And as many museums, they, you know, it takes enough money to run the museum rather than trying to keep it heated all year and manned. So during those other times of the seasons, maybe we point people out in the woods and they hike trails, you know what I'm saying? So there'd be a multifaceted set of opportunities for people who would look into any one of the displays or themes.
I'm just waiting to see if there's any more questions.
Mary still has her hand up.
I see that, but and I've got her unmuted if she wants to speak up.
Okay.
All right. Well, I really am super excited, like the other Mary was. You know, I'm ready to help make this happen, and we'll certainly consider a contribution when the time comes, especially when we can get that matching money for the grant. That'd be great.
Well, it's not delivered yet, but what if we get that, you know, that'll close a big gap right there.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. I mean, you know, Tom Joseph from the North Lakeland Discovery and Kay Kranz, as I said before, they spearheaded this grant writing and gave up a big chunk of their summer for this this chance at an NEH grant.
Don, anything more from you?
Well, I would just first off like to say thank you to Jim. I thought it was a wonderful presentation. And one comment I'd make is that Clio is an amazing app, and if people aren't familiar with it, they should search out some information about it, because it has lots of applications in history. Whether they are part of a historical group or a museum, there's a purpose and a usefulness to that app. And the other thing I guess I would say is that next month we will have our webinar. And this time we are going to be presenting, or we're going to have Bill Mathias presenting. He's going to be talking about a 1977 fire, the 5 Mile Tower fire. And I'm going to mess up the pronunciation of the name of the town, but Minong. There was a large fire there. He's the author of the book about the fire at Minong. And it should be interesting because we have a number of members to the Forest History Association that were also involved in that, fighting that fire and the response to the fire. And they will be joining in as at the end of the presentation for a kind of a joint discussion or a joint question and answer period. So should be a good presentation.
I can help you with the pronunciation. Minog.
Minong, okay. Thank you. Anyway, thank you all for joining us tonight. And as Tom explained before, we will post tonight's presentation on our YouTube channel no later than sometime tomorrow morning. And you can find them all there, and you can just search for the Forest History Association of Wisconsin on the YouTube channel to find them. Thanks for joining us.
Night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good, everyone.